Hi guys, welcome to Windsome Cottage Garden. My name is Hannah and I'm so glad that you decided to join me today. We are in the home garden, finally putting to bed our holding area. If you're new to my channel, I moved earlier this fall and I took a ton of plant splits with me when I did. They've all been in my backyard, new backyard that is, just kind of sitting, and I knew I wasn't going to get to getting them in the ground this season. So the time has finally come for me to store them for the winter in a slightly more protected way. And I thought I would bring you guys along for that process. It is actually pretty late to be doing this. It is December 8th when I'm filming this. I'm not entirely sure when you guys are actually going to be seeing this. I suspect it might actually be a couple days before Christmas, in which case, happy holidays. But it is 57 degrees today, which is insane, and the weather hasn't really allowed me to do this up to this point. So I thought, you know what, on a 57-degree day where I'm only working half a day, let's get out and get this put to bed so I don't have to worry about it all winter. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of lay it out. I'm going to be using two different methods to overwinter these plants. These are all perennials, and I am not entirely sure what all of the different zones they are. I have some tags, some I don't. As a general rule, if you are seeking to overwinter plants in pots, it should be 2 zones cooler than you are for the best likelihood of them coming back. I am a zone 6B. I suspect all of these plants are at least a 5. Some I suspect are cooler. There's also some steps you can take to better protect a root ball to ensure it could come back, because even though I said general rule of thumb is 2 zones, we might have a really mild winter that we can get away with even a zone 6 plant coming back. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of get all of my smaller pots sorted out, because I'm going to be sinking the pots that have smaller root balls. So let me get that process started, and then I'll kind of pause and talk to you about why I'm doing what I am, and then the other way that I will be storing plants. Okay, I got the bulk of them sunk, 2 big rows. And as I said earlier, I prioritized plants that either knew were a little less cold tolerant or had very small root balls. In sinking these pots, what you're really doing is kind of getting it to the ground temperature. Part of the reason why, if you're trying to overwinter things in pots, it's recommended you go 2 zones down, is because the airflow around the pot makes the soil in the pot a lot colder than it would be if it was naturally in the ground. So by sinking the pots, you're negating that a bit. So for these, I did also try to group like with like a little bit more. So I've got most of my iris that were in small pots, a lot of ground covers, a lot of astilbe. I do have one thing that I know is a zone 6, but has always survived in my zone 5 garden at my old house. And I just really you saw me come in and soften the soil with my auger and then use a hand trowel to sink, stack, and then kind of slap the dirt up against it. I thought I would show you a little bit closer what I'm doing. So if you wanted to do this in your own yard, you have a little more detail. So I already prepped this area. I'm actually really happy that the ground is not frozen. I didn't think it would be because it has been quite warm, but it was nice that it wasn't like I thought. And how I prepped this, just for those of you who don't know, these strips were actually all made with a rototiller earlier this year when I was moving some dahlias. Those have been stored for winter. So just coming with the auger to loosen it up and make this a lot faster and a lot less back breaking. Then I'm coming in with my handy dandy hand shovel and kind of digging out the size of this guy. I don't like, if I'm doing this in rows, I don't want to backfill until I've got the next one down, because it can sometimes make it a little bit harder to place this next one. And then I just kind of go along, fill in around. And then when I get like this, the other thing I'll do a lot is, you see that there's this gap right here, which would be really good to fill, but it can sometimes be hard. In an ideal world, you'd actually sink these all individually, but I don't have the space or time for that. So I'll fill the gap like this, and then it gets filled a little bit more as I just sink it a little bit more. And this is the one that is a zone 6. It's an acanthus bear's claw. And obviously, so I want to make sure that that is pretty well insulated. So I will really actually take the time to pack around it so it doesn't have any gaps that ice or water or coldness can seep into. That's what I do. Now that that's done, I'm going to do my second method of overwintering, which is what I'm primarily using for things that have larger root balls. With the larger root balls, I'm just not going to take the time to fully sink them. Instead, what I'm going to do is, I've got this whole menagerie. I also have some roses over there I need to pull that are actually looking amazing. Look at this. I mean, we've had a couple of chilly days. I think we did get down to like 20 something, but I don't know if you would be able to tell from the buds and the leaves on these things. They're looking really good. I also have a puppy here who's like, why aren't we going inside? The other one wanted to go inside. She'll, like Mia, that's Maisie. Mia's the older one, and she'll, come out for a while, and she gets annoyed if I don't invite her out. But then after about 20 minutes, she's like, okay, I'd like to go sit in the comfy couch inside. Maisie, on the other hand, will not go until I go in, though she might start getting fussy in a bit. I'm digressing. The dogs are distracting. But anyways, what I'm going to do is find a slightly sheltered spot. My whole yard is fairly sheltered. Oh, I should point out, the fence is done. I think I shared with you that my dad built a fence. This is the area that's like a little secret garden cove. This right here would be the most protected area for me to put stuff. But I'm going to be honest, I really don't want to haul everything all the way over here. And it doesn't get a lot of sun. Not that there's a lot of sun this time of year anyway, but I would have to, as soon as like late March hit, haul everything out as it started breaking dormancy. And I don't want to commit to that right now. So that's a really protected area because it's protected on 3 sides. But I also have 2 other areas that I think are fairly well protected and are a lot closer to where already a bulk of these are. This area in particular is where I'm going to put the main pile of plants. I'm going to kind of bring them back to about here. I'm going to use this holly bush. This is west, which is where predominantly our wind comes out of. So I'm going to use this as a natural block. I'm also going to put on the outer ridges the ones that I'm not as worried about, and then kind of pack inside the ones that might have a little less soil. The pot might be, there's some fabric pots, which I'm like, not the best to overwinter in. Because there's some wind that'll come out of the north, but I think it's fairly protected from the house. It'll get anything out of the south, it'll be protected from, and it's basically protected from any winds out of the east. The north will be the worst, but I'll just make sure to do a nice buffer on that side. And what I'm going to do is really just drag the plants, like I said, putting ones that I'm less worried about because they're super hardy on the outside. and then kind of pack the plants in. I also have a giant pile of leaves and pine needles that I'm going to pack in between the pots just to add a little bit of insulation. And that's really the plan moving forward, is just to pile everything up. Now, these are the larger root balls, which in theory, if they've got more soil surrounding the roots, then they're a little bit safer. And it's possible that not all these plants are going to be wintered over successfully. I just need to do what I can to give them their best shot. So with that being said, let's dive in. Finished. It is such a relief to know that it is done for the season. Let me give you a closer look and walk you through what I did when I was kind of placing things. I mentioned what I was going to do, but it makes a little more sense once you see it. I had it's still fairly large, but it was a large giant pile of white pine needles that I had saved specifically for this purpose. And what I did is as I kind of put all the pots in here, I took a handful of needles and just shoved them into the crevices and spaces between pots to kind of add just a bit of insulation. You could also do this with something like mulch. Since I had pine needles on hand, that's what I used. You could also use leaves. I had some backup over there in case I needed it. Clearly I did not. So as I kind of lined them up, you could see me trying to Tetris the bits that kind of nestled in together best, putting the more vulnerable plants in the center. So I did move all my roses over. I have a hydrangea, I have a hibiscus. What I could do, but I don't think I'm going to do yet because it has been so mild, I could actually bring pine needles and just cover this whole thing as an extra protection for the crowns of the plants. I'd intended to do some cutting back as I stored these, but I actually left all my secateurs up at the cottage from when I was dividing dahlias up there. And I don't know if I still have a mark. You can't really see it, but I cut myself real good doing that. I thought for a minute I was going to have to go get stitches, but I didn't. So you just have to be careful when dividing dahlias that you know exactly when you're holding things where you're snipping. But I'm digressing again. Long story short, because the secateurs were there, I did not end up cutting things back. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I had half cut these things back when I took them out of the ground to kind of give the root ball less to maintain. And any extra debris and stuff will just help insulate the root ball a little bit naturally. I can clean them up in the spring when I take everything out and inspect them. You also probably saw me do a little tidying up here where I just took a shovel and pushed any excess dirt up, particularly on this side since it's a more vulnerable side, up against the root balls. These guys, in case you're curious, there are a couple of things in those three, but they're pretty hardy things, and the rest were just used for the squash trellis, so I'm not even going to bother trying to move them, especially because I don't know if I actually could. But it looks really good. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention about how I had my holding area. You can see that where they were only here from about September 15th or 30th. So what is that? Like 2.5 months, but the ground clearly has been decimated. I had set these up based on light requirements in ways that I could easily water them from my water source. So in the spring, when it's time for me to water them again, they're going to come back out. I knew that they would do this to the grass. Eventually this will become a bed. I don't know how quickly it will, and it might not be quite this deep, but either way, the grass will have time to recover. So I wasn't worried about it dying in between. I was more worried about having water accessible to my plants. Just adding that caveat, if you are overwintering things, and you may have noticed that I moved this patch onto a bed. I don't think there's anything planted there. There's some iris that I made sure to give a birth to, but I did that because I knew it was going to be a lot larger of an area. It would definitely kill everything out, and it was more protected. I really appreciate you joining me for this video. I think it's probably going to be one of our last ones outside for quite some time, because even though it was glorious, you may have even seen me remove my jacket, it is unseasonably warm, a little concerningly warm today. So I think we're not going to be able to plant stuff. Usually the ground's frozen by now. I'm grateful it's not. But it means that there's more stuff to be done inside. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everyone else, and I hope you have an enjoyable time. I'm probably not going to post next week. We'll be back in January with more content. If you like this video, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye.